Hello, everybody. Welcome to Expression Pass here on Boss Rush Network. I'm your host, the Lots Excited Eddie V. Joining me is the one, the only Bossman himself, Mr. Corey Deary. Hello, good sir.
Hello, Edward. It is it's very nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too on this chilly evening, midnight,
Morning.
morning.
Yeah. It's yeah, I don't know, man. I just got really cold just now. I walked away for a little bit to go use the room and throw some stuff away, and now I'm cold because I moved. So that's cool.
I don't know how did that happen. You walked somewhere and came back.
I don't know, man. I got cold. It's cold.
Wow.
Okay, I don't know. I don't know. I'm looking at like a stack of like 8 blankets over on the couch. I'm like, man, I really wish I was under that right now, but I am not. So yeah, I'm just Ed, I have a question for you.
Yes.
How do you feel about collecting video games?
I enjoy collecting video games. I think it's a great thing for people who want to have um physical versions of games nowadays, or from the past, or in the current. I think collecting games, physical games, is reliable for people who want to experience a game in case it goes um off a service, or that's not in the store for people to buy,
Mm-hmm.
or nor you could download the game.
Yeah. I just asked because I've as we've added a little segment to Pow Block this year, the weekly pickups section, and I've just been trying to have something every week to show off, whether it's a game or an amiibo or a art book or something. And it's also really helped me kind of teach my kids about certain things, like in gaming related, not like not important life lessons, just the cool stuff. Um, but as I'm doing this, I'm realizing, like, man, I used to own a lot of games, and then I thought I was going to be one of these cool kids who went all digital all the time, and realized how much I hated it, not having like that white shelf behind me, right? Like that used to be,
Yes.
every single row on that shelf used to be full of games, every single one, right? And I'm trying to get back to that, even though I probably won't ever play all those games. But like, I also have another white shelf just like that one over here,
Yes.
that has a lot of DVDs and Blu-rays on it that I don't watch because I don't care about movies, but they're just like the Disney ones that we kind of collect. And we have all the Disney ones, and I have all the Marvel and Star Wars movies and certain movies that I really like physically, but I'm not like a collector, right? So but my goal recently has been to rebuild my game collection, and I've you know me and my lists.
Yes.
But I'm kind of approaching it in a different way this time, where like, obviously the Nintendo stuff I'm really focused on, but like I'm kind of, because every generation I kind of went back and looked, and I'm like, every generation I've kind of like picked 2 consoles to focus on, right? And obviously during the, kind of NES, Super Nintendo generations, there were really only 2 consoles to focus on, right? Like
Yes.
the Sega console and the Nintendo console. And then at the end, that N64 ish generation, there were like, 4 consoles within that era that I would consider, the consoles, different generations technically, but around the same kind of era, right? So It would be like the N64, the PlayStation, and the Saturn. But then you kind of lump the Dreamcast in there with the Saturn because it was only out for 18 months, even though it was part of the PS2, Xbox, GameCube generation, right?
Yes.
Um, so like the Dreamcast has kind of become my that generation substitute as the second console. uh, but like I'm just like looking at my games and I'm like, okay, well, the GameCube generation specifically, I'm like, well, I already have like the games I really like for Xbox that generation, right? Like Knights of the Republic, Jade Empire, Halo 1 and 2, Fable. Like I have those games physically. I kind of just put them away. Um, so like the consoles I should focus on collecting for that generation will be, primarily PS2 and GameCube. GameCube
Yes.
obviously the primary, and then PlayStation 2 for the JRPGs that I played. uh, and so like I don't know, I just and maybe I'm just a crazy person who does approaches collecting games like that. But what do you? I mean, when when you collect games, do you just buy everything all? I mean, how do you
So
approach collecting?
So I try when it comes to buying games or even collecting games, I try to buy them at the time of their release when they came out because um from when I had a my first job, and I was at an age of buying my own games. Like when it came to like N64 games, I would buy them at the rental store because they will only sell them for $3 or $4. They don't want those games no more. When it came to I was working at Six Flags. I was buying PlayStation 1 games. Resident Evil 1 was my first like mature game that I actually bought. I was at the age where I was able to buy that game.
Mhm.
And this is even before we I think I had a state ID. Yeah, I had a state ID at the time. So I was no, I didn't even have a state ID. I was
Mm.
able to buy um Resident Evil 1 at Montgomery Rewards without having an ID. My sister was with me, and because she was over 21, I gave her the money to buy it
Mm.
and everything. So I was able to like get that game, um, while being, um, uh, what year did it come out? Was it 96? I think it was 96.
You're
Um,
asking the wrong person, my
yeah,
guy.
it was 96 because I was still in high school, and my sister, we was able to work things out for that to happen. But like when I kept working and stuff, working at Six Flags. Then I worked for my high school as a DJ, and got my full check from working as like a DJ at my high school to get my Dreamcast and everything. And that's when Sega was about to announce that they was getting out of the hardware business. So I was going everywhere to get games, and there was a music store that had Jet Set Grind Radio, but it got sold out when it was closing. I'm just like, oh crap. But yeah, I normally now I try to buy games when they originally released first. Or if there's a collection, I'll try to get that collection and everything. It's kind of in a way, it's almost like me with books that um I don't normally go to bookstores or order a lot of books, but when I do order some books, it's stuff that I'm interested. But I'm normally at the dollar store or a Dollar General if I could find a nice thriller book for $1. Don't know who the author is. Just like, oh, this sounds like an interesting thriller. I'm gonna buy it. Here's $1. I at one point it was like almost every Saturday and Sundays I would stop at the dollar stores across the our areas and try to see what um thriller book that this one store has that's not at another store. And I used to spend like about $15 to $25 just on books. Um, Read some of them, but not all of them. In a sense. And that's me with collecting games. I think that's why we're in this backlog era of gaming with people who could buy their games, that we buy so much and we collect so much. Um, Playing it has to be a mood thing more than wanting to play that game after we buy it.
Mhm.
um and so but when it comes to collectings, I don't normally go back and collect the old unless it's a new version that came out, or a current, or some kind of version that came out for that current console.
Mhm.
um Whatever I had through my GameCube area, I had. Whatever I had through the PlayStation, Xbox era of their, with their time, I have. Um, some stuff I lost because of reasons, and there's other times where I still got my original copy of Eternal Darkness. You know, I still got my original Prince of Persia, the Two Thrones and stuff. So, like, I still got those games, even my PlayStation 2 stuff that I have. But like all my Super Nintendo stuff is gone. Um, and I had a flood, and my Nintendo wasn't working no more, and my Super Nintendo wasn't working no more. So I lost all of that. Um, but when the NES and the Super Nintendo Mini came out, I lean more to the Super Nintendo Mini because I remember a lot of those games that I play. And now that Switch has some of those games on there, plus with some Japanese games, I'm able to play those games that I missed out without having to worry about paying some crazy price to collect them, to have them.
Yeah. I wish I was like that. But also, like, I mean, there were some, you know, three pretty, I'll say, life altering life
Events.
events for me that changed the way I thought about collecting. And like, it's
Mhm.
been the struggle for me since those things of like, do I have physical copies? Do I not have physical copies? Right. And so like, one was a fire, one was a pretty bad breakup, and one was a death, right? So those are like the three life altering things. Do I want to keep these games around because it reminds me of those things? Do I want to, like, what if something happened, God forbid something happens to my house, but like, what if something happens
Mhm.
to my house and I lose everything again? Like, do I really want to go through that again? Um, but at the end of the day, like, I've kind of come to terms that like this stuff is kind of just stuff no matter how much you love it or
Right.
whatever, right? And things are replaceable, and this is why we have homeowners insurance and disaster insurance and all these other things. And like, obviously you're going to replace the essentials first, but like, some of that money, things are replaceable, lives are not.
Yes.
And I know it's kind of like a pretty drastic example of how I think about collecting, but like, I love opening cases. I love taking discs out or cartridges out and like turning them over. And some Switch games still come with manuals or paper,
Yeah.
or even the older games, like the other day I was flipping through what was it? The one of the manuals. I found the original Pokemon trainers manual. Like, so like the only thing I
Mhm.
need is like the box for Pokemon Red, and I have it complete in box. So
Yeah.
if anybody has one out there, I'll take it off your hands. Uh, Otherwise, I'm gonna try to like put some money aside and buy one of these things off of eBay, like an authentic one.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing, by the way, is like especially when you're collecting old cartridge based games now, you have to make sure they're authentic now and not just
Mhm.
some sort of ROM rip, you know, which
Right.
I know people that have physical games don't really care. Some people don't care, right? Especially games that never came out over here. Like, I know Stephanie just played through Mother 3, right? That never came over here, but she played it on Game Boy Advance, right? So,
Mhm.
uh, but like I've been looking at Zelda and Fire Emblem games for handheld specifically, and like there are some out there that are not authentic, and like there are people when they say authentic, like they have the cartridge taken apart and show the serial number and the battery and everything, and I'm like, man, this is awfully serious to be like. I'm not that serious about it, but also like
Right.
I don't want some fake version of a game. Uh, so like that's stuff I'm like learning about as someone who's trying to collect again, and obviously discs, that's a little bit different, but like the handheld gaming cartridges are like, oh my gosh, this is like.
It's funny. When it came to being a big collector, for me, it was EGM. Like anytime my mom was going to Walgreens, I was going with her.
Mhm,
And I was just like, I know you're just getting your medicine. I know you're just getting this and that, but are you are you able to spend $5 on me and get me this EGM? I was a great student. I read, like, going back to the book things, reading a lot of books and stuff, but I would pour so much time reading EGM at night and taking it to school and reading through that, and then coming home and reading more, reading all, and that's why I love, like, when OneUp.com and Ziff Davis and Shane Benahausen and Dan Shu and Karen Chu and all of these people, Brian Insar, who is I think the director for Brian Inhar, I'm sorry, who was the director of Spider-Man for PS4. He used to work at EGM before he went to Insomniac, and
mhm,
so you know uh, getting every, like, with EGM, like every month came out, I was taking my time and at first asking my mom to get it, then I was able to buy it myself, and I was reading it every month. Like EGM was like the video game bible to me, so collecting it every month, I was just like, I can't miss a day, and it was always, I gotta go to Walgreens to get this book because that's where EGM was at.
mhm,
And I started off EGM with the Mega Man 2 cover, and then went to the Legend of Zelda cover, but it was Japanese. It looked like Japanese anime
mhm,
on the cover. Like, that's how I started my collecting for video game books. And that's how kind of it went from. But even with video games, like my mom, she knew that when Mario came out, she had to have it before I did. So I was just like, okay. And so it then, like, when it came to collecting games, it was gonna be birthday, Christmas, or it was gonna be a cheap gift or something.
mhm,
Uh and then, like I said, when I got my own job, um going to GameStop and subscribe to Game Informer, and using that card to buy used games and stuff. Like, I was collecting during the PS2 and Xbox era. There were some games I would buy at $50 at regular price, but I was buying, like, my whole majority of my library for Xbox and PS2 was all used games. And there were some used games for GameCube, but I paid full price for my GameCube games and everything. And this is when I, on top of me going to school, everybody having a job, going to school, and buying my own games.
yeah, and I mean, I used to do that too, right? Like I would go
Hmm.
buy games if I wanted it, and you know, I never really thought about trading stuff in, or, you know, all this other stuff, right? Like I never really did think about any of that until like things started happening in life, and life happens, and like, oh, I need to I need to pay rent this month, so I need to sell this game because I didn't get enough hours to work, or, you know, like I spent too much money because I didn't manage my money correctly on dumb things, so I need to get rid of the things that I love. And that, I mean, that didn't happen too often, but it did happen a couple times. But then, like, you know, uh, when a fire melts your plastic cases, or you see like half of your Wii melted on your desk chair, like these are images that are not, you know, they make you think twice about things.
Yeah.
And I was like pretty minimalistic for a while, until like, I don't know, for a long time. So it just I don't know, but now I'm just like, man, some of my favorite memories are like getting physical games, like standing in line at midnight releases, or, you know, uh going to pick up, like I remember I I was excited for Final Fantasy 10, and I had just purchased Final Fantasy 9 and played it on PS2 on vacation with my cousin.
Hmm.
Because I got an EGM, and it was the Final Fantasy 10 issue with Tidus on the front of it.
Yeah.
Um, and I still have it. I think it's in that green tote back there.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
that's something I want to get into at some point too, is retro magazines, which we'll get into. Maybe that'll be the one up topic we do next. Which may or may not be out already, depending on if you're a patron or not. But you know, I remember I was like, I got to get all the Final Fantasies. So I walked into a Babbage's. Tell me when the last time you heard that name.
Ooh.
I walked in with $40, and for PS1, I bought Black Label Final Fantasy 7, 8, Tactics, and Origins for $34.
Nice.
Man, you couldn't get one disc of Final Fantasy 7 on PS1 for $34 now.
I think I spent 17.99
Mm,
on the Black Label no. Yeah, I think I got the Black Label because it wasn't the greatest hits ones
the
that I
greatest
got.
hits were that nasty neon green.
Green. Yeah, I got the original Final Fantasy 7, but it was a used copy for like $18.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's man, walking, or like I remember like there were games that I wanted, but then you would wait for the players choice versions to come out on
Mhm.
GameCube or uh N64, and you were hoping you're hoping that even though the box in the display case at Toys R Us had the gold kind of strip on it for
Mhm.
N64 or GameCube, like you would take the ticket back to the window and hope they gave you one that wasn't. um, and you know, it was, man, I love that stuff. Or like you would go back and like you wait for the PS2 games to become greatest hits, but like if you remember correctly, Sony used to send out red stickers to stores that still had inventory of the regular versions. So like the red sticker would go on the front of the case, but it was still like the length of the case, right? It was just like
Yeah.
rounded red thing. But like you would flip through and like red case, red case, red case. Oh, blue case. Oh, red sticker. When I open it, it's gonna have the black label on it. And like you would get so excited because you found the greatest hits that wasn't really a greatest hits one. Oh my gosh, I remember,
Exactly.
dude, when Best Buy used to have physical media and like rows and rows and rows of PS2 and GameCube games, like you would
Mhm.
just, dude, my dad would go in there and like look at TVs or like sound systems or something, right? And I would just be in the game section, like flipping through the games, looking at like you know, I remember doing that when I got my GameCube for my birthday that year. Like my
And
dad took me to Best Buy and I was flipping through and like uh looking at the launch GameCube games. I mean, there weren't very many, but I
all
was
right,
like, do I get Tony Hawk 3? Do I get, Pikmin? Because I had gotten Luigi's Mansion with the console.
it's crazy because my shopping for Nintendo was at Target and at GameStop.
Hmm.
The earlier shoot, it was software etc.
Mm,
Because my brother had the Sega Genesis and of course I had the Super Nintendo. But I there was one year that they had a bargain bin, and we call it bargain bin because you would get games for $20 or less,
hmm.
physical copies. And so um I would go in there and I would see a game, even KB Toy Store at this mall. I would go in there and I would see games under $20, and I'm or some were at at $20, and I would have $25 with me. So I would spend money to get that game, and then spend $1 at the arcade stuff. But yeah, when it came to like GameCube and everything, and like Sears also, because Sears also had GameCube games and Xbox and PlayStation, but Sears had the low key one,
Hmm.
that if a game wasn't selling they would throw it on a clearance sale.
Hmm.
And so you were getting first party Nintendo games that weren't selling for like $30 or
Hmm.
$25. And so I would be like, okay, I'm in the mall, I just got off for work, I got money, I'm not about to go. I'm like, let me check Sears first in case GameStop doesn't have it. And I would go to Sears, they would have that copy, and I would buy it, and everything.
Yeah, and then like I remember like my cousin and I used to go out shop because he like used to be a really proficient seller on eBay. He still
Mm.
is to an extent, but like we used to go out looking for clearance games all the time, and like he was on like the cheap ass gamer forums like looking for deals, and like he would plan like serious like sometimes multi-day road trips for us to go like search for games at like when Kmart's were closing, and like
Yeah.
they would have those clearances. And dude, I remember like I almost pulled the trigger on, they were like clearancing out Game Boy Advances for like literally like $25, right? But like it was at a point where like I didn't have a lot of money, and like I already had a Game Boy, like two Game Boy Advances, and I'm like, I don't know if I need an Arctic White Game Boy Advance for $25, or like the e-reader for $30 or whatever, right? And
Mhm.
which I should have bought both. And then like that's how I got my Game Boy player for the GameCube, was like in a clearance sale of like a Kmart, because they were discounted to like $15 or something ridiculous. Um, so that I had that, and the best one, the best thing was when Best Buy would like eliminate strategy guides from their system. They
Yeah.
would, instead of like not ringing up, they would all ring up a penny. So
Yep.
so like we
Toys did it too.
so like we'd walk up with like this huge stack of strategy guides, and like the cashier would like she would like call like this one time the manager had to come over because she didn't understand why they were all ringing up a penny. And the manager had to like stand there and explain it to her.
Yeah.
And like, dude, I got like the entire Prince of Persia trilogy of strategy guides. I got Oddworld Stranger's Wrath. I seriously got like probably 25 strategy guides, and it was like 30 cents.
The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker HD.
Hmm.
When they came to Wii U,
Hmm.
I went and got the strategy guide because they was on the opinion stuff, and
Nice.
they would let us buy it, and they
Yeah.
would they also uh when we had to uh throw them out.
Hmm.
I would put those strategy guides in my locker at work, and then I would be like, okay, I could throw the rest. But I was taking like all the Nintendo ones, like because
Yeah.
the Nintendo strategy guides they had nice cover. That quality was so
Well,
good.
yeah, because they were like the Nintendo Power ones, and
Yeah,
they had that like quality kind of like even if they weren't like the special edition ones, like they
yes,
still felt like
and
high quality. Like
they were thick. There were
yeah,
some good thick books, and I think that's what people now as the collectors don't get
hmm,
that back in the early 2000s, and I'm going just that route, early 2000s, that man gaming was affordable.
yeah,
Like, and yes, even if you did get a console and you didn't have the biggest name games, the $50 games and stuff, you could find some entertainment in the bargain bin stuff.
hmm,
We all, I think that's why GameCube was so affordable, not just because of the system, but the memory card was like $25, $20 to $25, and you could save about 40 to 50 games. The controller was expensive, but that is what it is. But you were able to get some AAA games on GameCube for like about $14, $15. Because at that time, nobody thought that Nintendo was mature enough to have like AAA games. But I'm just like, you used to find gems in the bargain bin for GameCube.
yeah. Or like when Target and Walmart would have like their clearance stuff on end caps, right? And
Yeah.
like you would learn targets like, okay, well, this has been on, this game has been on clearance for a week and a half. So they're going to drop it next week to like the next stage of their clearance percentage where like, okay, it dropped from 30% to like 60%. Okay, somewhere between 70 and 80%, they donate their stuff to like Goodwill or Salvation Army or whatever thing was, what at the time. And it's like,
Yeah.
but if you hide the games, you can get them at that 80% and hope they don't find it. And then you go back and you get like, I don't know, King,
Because the skies of Arcadia.
oh my gosh. Yeah. Scott, and then like, obviously the Dreamcast, like we talked a little bit about the Dreamcast earlier, but
Hmm.
like, man, when Best Buy had their Dreamcast clearance and all those games were $10 a piece,
Dude, games
dude,
no
I got, dude, I remember I saved up because I knew that like I wanted a Dreamcast, but I had already known that they were discontinuing it.
yeah.
Dude, all summer I worked at the swimming hole pool, whatever that
Yeah.
summer or whatever. Or wait, hold on. Dreamcast 99, 2000. No, I was at Domino's because like I was working for under the table for my cousin. Like
Oh, okay.
like my cousin and I both my cousin managed it and he hired me and my other cousin to work there. But instead of like paying me, he would double my cousin's hours and just pay it and like we would split the check or whatever. But
Yeah.
like I would end up picking up a lot of her shifts because I wanted a Dreamcast. Dude, I went and bought the Dreamcast Sonic Adventure bundle that came with Sonic Adventure, the
Nice.
demo for Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic whatever their equivalent of Mario Party was. I think it was called like Sonic Shuffle or something.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sounds shuffle
Um
thing.
so I ended up getting that, an extra controller, NBA 2K2, NFL 2K2, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. Like, dude, I probably bought like 10 games and I spent less than $200
Yeah. And that's
because the Dreamcast was 100
yeah. And,
99.99.
the thing about it was that you could go to many game, and I'm just using GameStop. You could go to as like 8 or 9 GameStops and see different prices for the Dreamcast games. The $10 at Best Buy. I think Target had some Dreamcast games, but they didn't have such a big section. Like it literally was just Xbox, PlayStation and Nintendo. And so when you was going to, and I think that's the thing for collectors is that's like you have to go to the unexpected places that people will go and get the stuff that people will unexpectedly buy. When I tell you that Dreamcast had so many games and games we ain't never heard of, but that was in the bargain bin, you were getting deals. You were leaving those stores with 4 to 8 games, and you only spent like about $15 to $20, or even 25 to 30. You was, and this is triple A stuff. Like you was getting Namco, Capcom, Konami, EA, Activision, Nintendo, whatever. You were getting a lot. And then with Sega's own lineup, like Sama de Amigo, um, Sonic Sonic games. With Capcom, you was getting like Power Stones. With Namco, you was getting Soul Calibur. Like you was getting top quality games, arcade games for like on the cheap, because then nobody really wanted. And then when you see that everything is getting popular and people start looking for it, you see the prices are skyrocketing high. Like I always talk about Phoenix right on the DX. That mug was in the bargain bin. It caught on, and that mug went back to the $29.99 regular price. But
Mm-hmm.
everybody had already bought it out of the bargain bin
Mm-hmm.
and everything. And so now I think we was talking on the show about garage sales and why, like, it's great to go to one if you can go to one and trying to see what video games are being sold, because grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, they probably like trying to get rid of my son's or daughter's video game collection. We don't need this. We're moving out the house. They're not coming in to get it. So you know what? Here's this game. It's $4. Here's this game. It's $4. Here's this game. It's $4 or $5 or whatever. I mentioned Skies of Arcadia. Here's Skies of Arcadia for a GameCube or arcade. They may say the wrong name or whatever, and you get it for cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And you got a not a collector's edition. You got a very good chance of having some gems in your library.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how I found the bouncer. I bought my PS2, and it was like I
Mm-hmm.
was like all prepared to buy Madden, and I bought Madden and NBA Live, 2001, I guess, because it would have been yeah, and they were cheap. And I was like, oh, what's this? I was like, oh, this kind of looks like a fun romp. And so I bought the Bouncer, and that was the first PS2 game I ever played was the Bouncer, and I still have that copy. And it's like, man, I mean, look, the Bouncer's not like an amazing gamer by any
Right.
stretch, but like it it means a lot to me because it was a bargain that I found, and it was a game that I played a lot because I couldn't afford anything else.
And yeah, and so now if you think of collectors nowadays, um like Unicorn Overlord, couldn't find that game from nowhere, and it was expensive online. Went up to go see Jesse up in Appleton, and it's sitting here. It is sitting in the freshman copy right on the stand at Best Buy, and I'm like, and it's only $40. Let me snag this right now,
Mm-hmm.
because like this game is hard to find, and snagging some other games and
And
stuff.
that regional rarity is also something that's like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
strange too, because like and I was talking to Stephanie, and she was like couldn't find like Persona 5 anywhere, and she found it at a store for like I don't know, like $20 or $25, and like around here it's everywhere for $25. I was like, if you wanted it, you should have just I could have mailed it to you. But like but that's just like one example of like regional rarity is so strange.
Yeah.
And like I remember like we couldn't find games around here for anything, but like my cousin and I drove up to Detroit, like a 3-hour trip to Detroit because all the Kmart's up there were closing, and like the games that we were looking for were all there. Like they were all there, and we would snag them all up, and you know I mean, I told you at one point the GameCube version of like the Fire Emblem GameCube game was everywhere for $24.99.
Yep.
Everywhere. I had a copy. When I left my previous relationship, I left half of my video game collection there on not on purpose, but like it was ugly how it ended, and realized a bunch of stuff later. But like at that point, it was like $200 to replace, and I didn't have that kind of money at the time. You know,
Right.
and now I'm at a point where like I'm looking at copies of it like I can afford it now. Granted, there's other things to pay for right now because I have a family and a wife and all these other things right at
Right.
that right now. But like, it's at a point where like it wouldn't be anything massive to drop, that money to rekindle my love for that game and Fire Emblem. And I mean, that's how I felt when I got Twilight Princess right again, and it was like this pristine copy, and it like brought back all these memories of like playing that game. I played the GameCube version on the Wii, right? Like, and like how much that game means to me, and like it just games, man, they're powerful.
Yeah. And I think that's why, and I know we're gonna wrap it up. I
Are
think
we?
that's
I think Ed's ready to go to bed. You should, if you're not watching the video, you should see him. He's like all under the covers and like about like I'm surprised there's not a pillow laying up against your wall, Ed, and you're just
it is. It's right here.
uh,
No, but like I think collectors in the past to collectors nowadays, there's a big difference, and definitely price is a big thing. But like buying a game has a lot of meaning,
mhm,
um, especially when you buying it yourself, and in the meaning and the fact that you know you're about to have memories. You're about to create moments. You're about to get a game and be able to play it and tell a friend about it. You get to experience a double A game or a low budget game that might actually be good, be surprises. You know,
mhm,
yeah, it have the cutscenes and voice acting and all of this stuff, but I'm like, it was an experience, and it was just something. It was something on the level of that. I won't say people were minding on their own business, but it was just like the experience that you heard from other gamers about different games.
mhm,
Um, was just so worth it because people went out and was trying everything, or whatever budget that they had, they try to get a game. Maybe they couldn't afford Halo, but maybe this shooter might do some justice and stuff. It may not look good, but shoot, you might play it and be like, man, the controls are tight. It got a banging soundtrack. It's 6 hours long. I'm having fun. Yeah, I thought this is a great game, and so, um, you know, nowadays there's so much pizzazz that you think that's gonna wow player, and not the pizzazz won't do anything.
mhm,
And I think that's why with Best Buy and really Best Buy, um, I don't know Target and Target now too, and I don't know how Walmart is doing with their physical game stuff like Drindle,
doesn't
going
exist
down.
anymore.
Yeah, it almost doesn't exist. It makes being a collector hard. There's an article on Nintendo Life about limited run games, about why they had to struggle, and they've been trying to make things right. When Switch came out and indie games started getting more popular over first party, well, not first party, about third party and stuff. Um, and people wanted a physical limited run, and all of those companies took the chance, and that stuff made them popular. Even Knuckles and stuff, like when they started putting out the physical versions, people were spending the $30 to $40 to get this indie game that was only about $15 on the eShop
Hmm.
because they wanted the physical. They knew that this was going to uh that this is going to be a way to show those developers and studios that not only do we support you, but we would double dip because your game is this good.
Hmm.
So the collecting age nowadays became the double dipping era age for us, where we were buying the physical editions.
Yeah. It's different these days, right? Because of the
Right.
rise of digital, and my nephews don't have any physical games. Like, I mean, my one nephew doesn't even have a console right now. He plays all of his games through the cloud. Like, subscribes to Game Pass and plays through the cloud on his Chromebook. Like, that's how he
Oh
plays
wow.
most of his games. Uh, Obviously they have two Xboxes that they play like Fortnite and stuff on, but like they're really into cloud gaming and they're really into digital games. Like they I like my one nephew who's like really into Pokemon, like he's like, "Oh, I saw a YouTube video on like these, you know, the old like the old handhelds and they play like these little square box." I'm like, cartridges?" He's like, "Yeah," and they were like looking at the old Pokemon games and like the very first ones. I'm like, "Yeah, I have it. It's in a box in my basement." He's like, "You do?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, he wants to see it. I'm like, this is the kind of stuff that kids are missing these days, and like,
Hmm.
not that they need to experience that. There's plenty of other experiences for them to have, but like, I don't know. There was just something about walking into like the used game store and like, I remember trading in a couple games for like I wanted NBA Jam, but they didn't have it, so they gave me Barkley Shut Up and Jam instead, and it was like, that's not very good. Um, but like, you make mistakes like that, or like, before the internet, you go in and base your decision off what the box art looked like on
Yeah.
the very terrible Xerox copied tag,
Hmm.
and like hopefully like you know you didn't get a terrible game that you saw the cover of. And usually at that point, right, like I was already looking at like Nintendo Power and EGM and all these other things, so I kind of had an idea. Or like, my friend would get every game under the sun because they were like millionaires, and he got everything he wanted, right? So like I learned that way. But those days, man, those days.
Yeah.
Should have traded my Genesis and all my games for Super Nintendo.
No, the Genesis had some bangers. The Sega Genesis was history, and
Sonic Spinball. I broke Ed.
that game is history. And I'm gonna leave it at that with that game. Hey, shoot, when my brother got his Sega Genesis, his first game outside of Alter Beast that came with the system was Michael Jackson Moonwalker.
Hmm.
And then he got Joe Montana. Like he was turning his Genesis into the sports system, and I
I
was
mean,
turning
that's
it
that's what you
into
bought.
everything else.
That's what you bought Genesis for, though, was the sports games.
Yeah,
Because Nintendo's like didn't really do them all that well for some
yeah.
reason. So like,
He had Bulls versus Blazers and everything when EA had that big yellow cartridge thing and stuff. And so like he would play the sports games and I would play like the action and adventure games and stuff on there. Um I beat him once in Joe Montana and never played them again so I could keep my record. But he beat me in Joe Montana too. So I was just like, okay, fine, you got your revenge. I don't know how to play football. I don't
what
know.
a
I didn't know how to play football games, so I was just like,
Oh, you just pick the Washington Redskins and you do a spin move from your punt return every time and you score every time.
Wow.
That was my strategy
Stretchy.
in Joe Montana Football 94. Check that.
Was that the second game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, because they only did 2 Joe Montanas. I did not like the second one. I like the first one better.
Yeah, and they changed over to Quarterback Club. Man, what a...
Oh, really?
I don't know if they changed over, but that was the game.
I remember
that was after.
I remember that was the bigger thing, and then when Madden came out, that became the football game.
Yeah, I wanted Madden really bad for N64, but like Madden was like $70 at the time, which obviously is not a big deal now, but like back then it was a lot. And Quarterback Club was like 25, so I got Quarterback Club instead. So, whatever, I guess.
I know. Let's see. I brought Tecmo Bowl for at the rental store. Double dribble.
Bo Jackson spin or zigzag moves. That's all you needed.
Wow.
Tecmo Bowl. That's all you needed.
That is true. Tecmo Bowl used to knock. That soundtrack used to be so good. I think it's Bases Loaded or it's RBI Baseball. It's one of them that if you got to hit the pitcher, if you was the pitcher and you hit the player, you was able to go out and fight. Like a Street Fighter or something. But they took it out because of the MLB rules. Something about that you could have fighting like that in video games. I know you had a fighting game in some of the hockey games and stuff, and then whenever Mutant League Football was and stuff. And then there was Arch Rivals where you could just punch somebody and steal the ball.
Jeez. Yeah. And there's NFL Blitz later, and
yeah,
good times.
NFL Blitz became big in the arcade scene.
I know. I was excited because it was the first football game I ever played with the Browns in it, outside of Joe Montana 94, right? But like, it didn't have any of the right players on it though, because it came out, it was Blitz 99, but the Browns came back in 99 and the expansion draft hadn't happened yet. So like the Browns didn't have any players on it. So it's like who's this guy? Good times. Go Browns.
Mike Grasshopper. Who's the heck is Mike Grasshopper? Never played on the Browns.
I was like, I need Eric Metcalf. He was my favorite player before the Browns left the first time. I loved Eric Metcalf. He was awesome. Vinny Testaverde. Good times. Okay. All right, get me out of here, Ed. We're going to start talking about 80s and 90s Browns players, and I know nobody wants to hear about that. So.
Well, everybody, that's going to be it for Expansion Pass. We want to hear your stories about collecting. Maybe you was a person who started collecting in the early 2000s or in the 90s. We definitely would love that to hear. With that, everybody, have a great week, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time on Expansion Pass. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye. If you want to see how you can become a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. The Patreon producers for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dierig, Francisco Santillan, Matthew Keel, and Todd Oxtra. Thanks for your continued support of the Boss Rush Network.